football and we have takes. Welcome to Football Takes. Football! Yeah! Football!
All right, we got Thor Nystrom in the house, our resident college football and draft aficionado. Judd Zolgad, connoisseur of the Pop-Tarts Bowl, even though he will not admit so publicly.
Yeah.
Nope, never seen it.
And I'm just hoping the Gophers can find.
Neither is Marcus Freeman.
Yeah. No, Marcus Freeman doing the national tour yesterday finally, and then I just hope that the Gophers can find their Mark Cuban at some point. But I'm going to throw this take out. We'll go around the room. You could have. This is a hybrid of something Judd threw out on our Mackey and Judd podcast earlier today. I'm going to expand it because Judd, you had it as kind of a Big Ten point that like 5 years ago you could have said, all right, cut the Big Ten in half, take all the crappy Big Ten teams historically. Mm-hmm. How many would you guess before you got to Indiana? If you were to take, I'll take it a step further. If you were to take every single FBS school in America 10 years ago, put them on a list, and then maybe even like 2 or 3 FCS schools at the time, and said, in 10 years, one of these teams, so take off all the usual suspects, the Ohio States, the teams that you could envision winning a national championship. Take the other, like, whatever it is, 60 or 70 or 80 teams that you would not envision, and some FCS teams. In 10 years, one of these teams is going to win the national championship. I would have rifled through 50 guesses on that crappy list before I got to Indiana. That's my take. I feel like that is the magnitude of what happened last night. Is there a bigger turnaround in the history of football, college or pro, than what we saw culminated last night?
Is there a bigger turnaround in the history of sport? The degree of difficulty of what was done in only 2 calendar years, I don't know what you could put up with. It's an impossibility. It can't happen, and it just did. And the dominant fashion in which it was, you had a school there, like we talked about earlier this week, that had only won 3 bowl games in its history, winning 3 college football playoff games to win the national title, to finish off the first 16-0 season we've seen in college football, the highest level of it in 125 years. And we went through the schedule of the Yale Bulldogs back in 18 whatever it was when they did it. But
1894, put some respect on the 1894 Yale Bulldogs.
Yeah, that was a hell of a team. But yeah, no, this is unprecedented, and we're never going to see something like this again. I don't think so. So it was really cool to watch last night.
Or are we, perhaps? So I was doing some pre-show prep for this, and I think there is a very interesting potential here. And I think a lot of longtime college football fans are going to hate it, but I sort of like it. And that is the sense that if you know, it used to be your program, right? And you would recruit, and there were all the ordinary things, and you might cheat. Good for you, but it was not necessarily run as a cohesive business. Indiana boys, the world of college football now is so small. Indiana is the first time national champion in 29 years, nearly 30 years since a school that hadn't won a national championship won one. And
Florida?
And Florida's the last one. Florida 29 years ago, very good. But Florida also, up until then, had been good. Like, they got super competitive. They just didn't win one. And then they finally did. So, in some ways, I think that what the Hoosiers have shown you, if you want to commit to it, and that's a big if, but if you want to commit to it, I think the Hoosiers have shown you a new path to what I would consider to be sort of, it's called college, but it's a professional style setup that can be taken advantage of in a good way.
Yeah, 100%. And this is why I love NIL. I love the ability for players to freely move. I would like a little bit more restrictions now with where we've gotten it, which we've also talked about. But it opens up the ability. You know, when this started, the NIL and the free transfers, the thought was that this was going to lead, you know, your Alabamas and your Ohio States and the blue blood programs to just be even more blue bloody, and then everyone else will sort of be omitted from the dance in advance. This shows you that this new sort of paradigm that we have, that even though I don't think exactly what we just saw. I don't think we're ever going to see that again. But I do think you now have open possibility of non-traditional powers becoming good pretty quick. This was a unique confluence. You had the guy who is the best coach in the sport right now. I don't know how you could argue with that at this point in Signetti going to a school where they had a lot of money. It just, we didn't know about some of it, and how big their alumni base was, and because it had never been employed before, in part because the rules had just changed right before that, but also a Mark Cuban character, right, who is willing to bankroll the whole thing. You see how quickly a school like that can get sort of pulled up by the bootstraps. So I think it's cool to see this new mechanism that we have in the sport and the free agency, that it's not only just benefiting the top ones. In fact, it's been this disruptive force that allows non-traditional contenders. In this case, we saw one of them win the national title.
So what if we did a pie chart of why Indiana popped up and won the national championship over the 2-year stretch here? If I gave you three slices of pie, what percentage of credit would you give to each of these? Or if there's a fourth slice I'm not thinking of, but NIL money led by Mark Cuban being one factor, Curt Cignetti's coaching being another factor, and then all throw a third factor in, the strategy by which they spent the money. It felt like they went out and grabbed older players. I mean, they clearly had an idea and a vision for how they were going to spend that money. What percentage credit would you give to each of those variables for why Indiana went 16-0?
I'd probably go 70% to Signetti and maybe 15% for each. Oh, wait, am I doing? Yeah, no, that's right. The right amount. 15% each for the other two. You needed the financial flexibility to be in play for instance, Fernando Mendoza. Mendoza is the guy that flipped that game. They don't win the national title without Mendoza. There was stories in advance of the title game. You look around, and I saw one of the popular narratives from some of the writers was like, oh, Miami, they have 11 or 12 guys that are projected to get drafted in the next draft class, depending on the declarations, whereas Indiana only has 6. And we think about traditional blue chip roster metrics, that should mean that Miami should not be the underdog here, and they were sort of making that argument. But if you do it by trade charts, and where were the 6 Indiana guys, where would they have been ranked against the 11 or 12 Miami guys? Indiana's side would have had more draft equity because they had the best one. They have the number 1 overall pick in Mendoza. Well, you can't sway him unless you had $3 million, right? It turns out he should have been paid more. Mendoza was worth, turns out probably 3 times that, right? But you still have to identify. Signetti is awesome. He does his own scouting. That's he watches on his tablet on his Davenport in his living room or whatever. Like it's old reliable easy chair or whatever. But he does all the evaluations on his own, which is. So that part of it's crucially important. It allows you to sort of moneyball some of these transactions and get them maybe for a little bit less than they should be going for. You have to have the financial flexibility. But then, of course, he's the Nick Saban of the sport. And the real cheat code is just Curt Cignetti himself. But yeah, the other 2 factors are definitely in play as well.
So I think I would probably give a little bit more to Cuban and the boosters, but I agree with your basic premise. But what this comes down to is if you're going to do this right, it needs to be, because you can have all of the money in the world pour in, but if you don't get the right guys, right? So what I like here is they clearly did both. And again, I'll say it came away as a very professionally run program. Cuban owned the Mavericks previously. He basically has just sort of been like, you know what, I'm out there. I will give you millions. In fact, supposedly, I saw this from a couple of days ago before the championship game. Supposedly, Cuban's donation or funding has gone up from 2025 to 26. And they now have a guy that I'm sure Thor knows a lot about, TCU quarterback Josh Hoover, on the hook transferring in. And he's going to get $2.1 million. So, to me, this is all spending in the right places. It's coaching. But it does sort of give you, if you want to do it, it does sort of give you a blueprint, I think. I don't know that this blueprint existed previously. It does now. You got to do the right things, but to me, it's a very, very clear plan if you can get the right people and everyone on the same page for the right commitment.
Yeah, and it's far sort of simpler than it might seem like, outside the surface in that what they do is they are paying in the transfer portal for production now. They don't care what your star rating was as a recruit. They don't care about your theoretical upside. They care about how good are you right now, and then how good of a fit would you be for our system and where our needs, of course. It's a different way of doing it. That's what they're willing to pay for, and they're prioritizing guys that are more developed. Obviously, there's the thing with the age, and they have older players, but they're looking for guys whose skill set has already been polished off. That's what they're willing to pay out of their kitty for, and you're not as aggressive. For instance, with the high school recruiting, I think that's a smart way to go. I've advocated if I was a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school, I would not sign with a blue blood school. I would sign with a G5 that runs an air raid, and I would go in, start year one, like for a Clay Helton, a Tyson Helton, Western Kentucky, Georgia Southern. They both run air raids. There's other ones. Hawaii runs, it's not air raid, but the run and shoot. Go to a place where you can put the ball in the air 400, 500 times as a true freshman, and then auction yourself off on the open market heading into your true sophomore year, as opposed to what most of them do, which is you go to a blue blood school, you sit behind an established veteran, then you have to transfer after the true freshman year, but nobody has seen you. Now you go to another school. A lot of times you see those guys transfer 3 times before they ever get a shot, and some of them never get a shot. But yeah, the whole dynamic with all this stuff has changed because of NIL and the free transfers.
I love that concept. So essentially, you'd still be if you stayed in an FBS. You're saying don't go to an FCS school, but go to a group of 5 or go to a G5 school, right?
Yeah.
And take a little bit less or a lot less, but you're still getting paid probably, right? Like you're still getting 6 figures or something. So you might be taking less NIL money as a freshman than you would if you went to a blue blood school. Is that correct? But you'd be showcasing yourself and betting on yourself to get paid as a sophomore or a junior.
That's exactly right. You might have to give up maybe around $1 million as a true freshman in terms of what you could get being the backup, of Ohio State or a Georgia or whatever to go to. You're going to get a couple $100,000, I think, going to the G5 place, but you're going to, if you're good, you're going to recoup that multiple fold after that, right? Because if you do have the big season throwing every down in like an air raid type offense as a true freshman, you're going to have everyone after you in the portal after that. And the top quarterbacks in the portal, those are the guys that get paid, right? Now they're breaching the $6 million, and getting up there or whatever. That's what I would do if I was the 5-star, because no one is as goes that far to the polarity as Signetti, where he's like, don't care about the other stuff, just the production thing. But like more coaches are going to that of like, if we only have this many resources, we want to put most of it towards proven production as opposed to the theoretical upside thing. So the transfer portal has become bigger than high school recruiting. And I think it's incumbent upon the high school recruits coming out to sort of recognize the environment that they're going into. It's also non-traditional compared to, how we've seen that going, the past 40 years of the sport or whatever. So I would change my behavior as well as a high school recruit.
So Thor, who in your mind, since you follow the sport so closely, give me a school or two that you think at least has the potential to be the next Indiana type team. Like, who don't we talk about? And you look at the coaching staff and the potential talent there and say, if they follow that blueprint, they could have a chance.
This team is closer, but I think Vanderbilt thinks that they're that. They think that their coach, maybe not Signetti, but pretty damn good. And especially when you had the assistant, Jerry Kills helped out quite a bit there. But sure. Vanderbilt, they were able to sort of build themselves up, and initially it wasn't with having NIL an edge with that. But you've seen now with the success that they've had, how it makes it easier for them to recruit. They actually got a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school. This kid, Jared Curtis, I think is his name. But with Pavia leaving, Diego Pavia leaving, Jared Curtis, this is an example where the 5-star kid probably will get to start in the SEC as a true freshman. So in this case, I would advocate for what he's doing. But now you have more resources. You're in Nashville. So they have a bigger alumni base. I think maybe some people think that has a little bit more money. You're in the attractive city. I think they would make that argument that maybe they're the next Indiana.
I mean, you could, if you're one of these schools that has an NIL fund, rather than, not that you shouldn't be recruiting high school quarterbacks to come into your pipeline, but that almost feels like a waste of time compared to literally combing through, like, okay, you need a quarterback and you're Indiana. You could either go find the next 18-year-old and I mean, I guess if he's ready to play right away and you can pay him, okay, like there are some unicorns that can step right in as freshmen. But you're better off, and I don't know, some of these guys might be seniors who don't have eligibility, literally combing through and saying, all right, who were the top quarterbacks at non-power schools? Jacob Clark from Missouri State, who actually was a Gopher like 5 years ago.
Sure was.
Gopher. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Jalen Rayner from Arkansas State threw for 260 yards a game. And, like, you're better off hunting those dudes than 18-year-old quarterbacks, right?
Yeah, because you've seen them on film against other FBS players, right? So you have a much better idea of what is that guy actually, and it makes it easier to sort of project him into your system and how we're going to use him and stuff. Where, the high school recruits, it's great, and the high school recruiting's great, but there's so much projection there, and it becomes theoretical, right? And if you only have a fixed income, fixed budget with this, and you can only give out so much, why would you do it to theoretical as opposed to the certainty? And that's probably the genius of what Signetti's doing. It sounds super common sense when you just say it like that. But yeah, he's leaned into that harder than anyone.
Football.
So fascinating. All right, let's keep diving deeper here. Thor, sling a take off that game last night.
I think my take would be you have to put Indiana on the short list of the all-time great teams of modern college football. And I already saw some people bristling against this of like, oh, you cannot include this team in the same sentence as 2019 LSU. Why not? Why can't you? You think LSU 2019 is going to blow out this Indiana team that we just saw? Doubt it. I'm not saying that Indiana would win, but I absolutely think that they should be in that discussion. That's the best team, the last decade in college football. I put this Indiana team on the short list, certainly of my time covering college football really close. And, there's the historical element to what they did. And I think, sometimes there's a fixation on that and the storyline of it. And this is a movie and like all that sort of stuff. And we might lose a little bit that this was a dominant Colossus team in college football that went one by one, the meme with the Grim Reaper and there's all the doors and it has the blood coming out. They went one by one and just eliminated, it's like a horror movie, taking out all these big boys, Ohio State and Oregon and Miami, and just going one by one and knocking them all down in the dominant way that they ended up doing it. It's a really cool story. Yes. And the way that they did it will be studied in college football for millennia as people try to replicate what Curt Cignetti did. But I don't think we should lose how awesome of in isolation that 25 Indiana Hoosiers team was on the field.
And, college football, I mean, 2019 might as well be 30 years ago now, too. Like what they did in the current climate. And I found a factoid that this was the losingest football program in college football going into this season. And that was coming off a pretty good 2024. But yeah, I think like trying to compare this though and say the 2019, first of all, the sport's changed a lot since then. But second of all, yeah, when they did what they did to get 16 wins, I don't understand how you can try to poo-poo that. Like this isn't a feel-good story where they popped up, got in the playoff, they were fortunate, and then ran through that. This was a story of season-long dominance.
100%. And my whole point is this Indiana team, if you had put this in a different year, they would have won the Natty in most of those years. Maybe not all of them, but pretty close. This is one of the great college football teams that we have seen in modern times.
The Signetti part of it, too, is so interesting because he's 64 years old, and unless you're a Thor Nystrom and you're grinding James Madison games, 2 or 3 years. I mean, James Madison popped up and was a ranked team in 2023 in Signetti's final year, and they were kind of on the map and like, oh, could they find their way into a bit? They wound up in the Armed Forces Bowl, but there was kind of some discussion on the fringes. I guess my question is, he didn't get a head coaching gig until he was 49 years old And unlike a lot of other guys that were coaching in Power 5 conferences, and particularly under Nick Saban at Alabama for a few years, where you would maybe jump from that job into like a fairly high profile, like a Rutgers or something, right? A Power 5 job. He started at IUP as a head coach back in 2011, 6 years at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania. And then from there jumped over to Elon for a couple years. That was in the Colonial Athletic Association before he got to James Madison for 5 years. That's a pretty typical coaching journey for like the average coach. Like, oh, you go to a small school assistant, small schools, and then maybe if you're lucky enough, you can coach in the Big Ten. But he wasn't just like an average coach who took an average coaching path and was, he's one of the best college football coaches we've ever seen in these 2 years. Where was he before the age of 62 is my long-winded question here. Isn't it wild?
It is kind of wild. Yeah. And he got pigeonholed as the position coach, basically, where he got to an older age with coaching and he still hadn't, even though he was a respected assistant, where he hadn't been the coordinator. And so then it was like, what bigger school is going to hire a position coach as a coach? That was sort of the thing because he had worked his way all the way up to Alabama. Right. That's where he was in the previous thing. I think he became the run game coordinator there,
yep.
But that was the furthest that he got. He was never just the OC anywhere, but yeah, position coach at, Davidson, Rice, Temple, Pittsburgh, NC State, then Alabama. And you're just sort of on that track. And I think in that profession, people just start viewing you like that and you're continually bypassed for the new Johnny-come-lately young coordinator whose unit the past year had a really good season. They're the guys that are going to go first, or the retreads. Of course, Signetti, to get that head coaching opportunity that he so badly wanted, he had to leave Nick Saban and Alabama and go to D2 and then work himself up. You talk about an all-time bet on yourself kind of a thing of like, I will succeed, and I don't care what level I start at. Last night I made the joke on Twitter about he just lived out all of our dreams with the NCAA football game.
Yes, I talked about that today too. You pick the crappiest school, and then you bring them to a national championship.
And for him, it's even more expansive NCAA football game because to get to one of the crappiest Power 4 schools that exists in Indiana, to turn them into the Colossus, that's not where it started. He had to start at frickin' D2 IUP or whatever, and then he had to go to Elon, and then he had to go to James Madison, and that's after the 20 plus years as an assistant, getting the coffee and just grinding, under guys like Nick Saban. So incredible story.
I feel like one of my 3 proudest college accomplishments was in NCAA football 2004 for PlayStation 2, taking Northwestern to the national championship level and then building a dynasty. And I told these guys on our Mackey and Judd podcast, I was watching after they got done with all the podium stuff, and they had that kind of wire camera up in the corner of the stadium, Hard Rock Stadium, and it's panning out, and you're seeing confetti falling, and you're seeing the 2 big jumbotrons with the Indiana logos and the national championship. And it was literally a flashback to that video game you're talking about, where you got Toledo is the national champion of college football. It looked and felt fake if you had been watching Indiana football for all those years.
Yeah, it's the Hollywood script where if it hadn't just happened, they would have gotten laughed out of the screening room. Because it's an impossibility, and even like the idea, it's almost like not like a Ted Lasso, but it's almost as low probability of someone at that age leaving in Alabama, going down first time head coach at D2, and then so quickly working up to then where you win a national title at a place that you cannot win a national title in this sport. So yeah, it's crazy. Like, you still are kind of trying to process it because again, it's unprecedented what just happened, and I don't expect it to happen again. I saw the Reddit college football Twitter thread. They put out stuff that's always kind of interesting. They put out a list of things that Indiana accomplished this year. I'll just give you guys a brief taste of it. This was the first 10-win season in program history, the first 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16-win season in program history. Of course, it was the first 16-win FBS season, first undefeated season in program history, first top 5 matchup in program history, first game of the century in program history, first win over a number 1 team in program history, first time being the number 1 team in program history, first Heisman winner, first time beating Ohio State in 37 years, first time winning the conference outright in 80 years, first playoff appearance. This list, it's like a friggin' biblical scroll of things that had never happened before because it just can't happen at that school, and it just did.
They were trash. Like for years, absolute trash. Like everybody else at some point in time, I think had sort of popped up like in the original Big Ten, right? But they hadn't, and I believe they went, if I'm not mistaken, boys, in 1967, there was a 3-way tie for the Big Ten title. Minnesota, Purdue, and Indiana. And I believe Indiana went to that Rose Bowl because back then the team that went was the team that hadn't been there in the longest. But like that was up until these last 2 years, that was their grand accomplishment.
Yeah.
It was like we went to the.
You know who their coach was when they went? We went over their bowl game history, which didn't take very long on yesterday's episode. Who their coach was when they won their first bowl game in 1979?
Lee Corso.
Lee Corso.
Yeah.
Lee Corso, man, the Holiday Bowl. I could see on Signetti, by the way, I could see if he did interview or had aspirations for other jobs and like wanted to start higher than D2, back 15 years ago, how he would be, unless you were really tuned in the interview process, how you could overlook his personality in a job interview. I mean, think about like if Kenny Dillingham walks into a room and kind of his young, fiery, dynamic personality, but there's a charm to him as well. There's not a lot of charm. There's a little, you'll see it a little bit with Signetti here and there. Like at the end, Molly McGrath has kind of a hold on him, right? This is the second week in a row where she's done the, how are you going to celebrate, coach? And he cracks a quarter of a smile and says, I'm going to drink a beer. And then like, that's it. And then no more. But his introductory press conference at Indiana and the assembled media is like, who are you? I win. Google me, right? And
I love that.
I love it too.
But
bro,
great.
like somebody was putting out the photo of his first home game at Indiana, and there was like 12 people in the crowd.
Yeah.
And that was 15 months ago, September of 2024.
If you were to, if a college football fan like Thor was to be given a picture of Signetti and said, put him in an era like the 60s, the 70s, he would have probably been put in the late 70s or 80s, is my guess. Like with a Hayden Fry type, right? Like he looks like that. I mean, definitely not 2025. So, yeah, he is. You're probably right, Phil. Like, I mean, schools like guys like Fleck. They come in, they're enthusiastic. They've got this whole thing about rah, rah, rah. I can't imagine Curt had a big rah, rah, rah. I'm sure he had a packet of exactly what he was going to do. But it probably comes off fairly flat. But I mean, what the hell?
NIL actually makes it so that you don't like it's when the playing field was, I'm going to use air quotes for this, was a little more level.
Yeah.
There was still money being spent. It just was more of a black market reserved for SEC car dealerships. But when the playing field was more level and you had to sell yourself and your program, and there wasn't a $1 million difference in the budget that you got, right? I think that salesman aspect of recruiting was much more important. And like there's still some element of that because players do still have choice and there still is a market. But if I can tell you, hey, my personnel, I'm not PJ Fleck, but here's $1.5 million. Do you want to be our left tackle? That speaks louder than the salesman stuff that has needed to be done for the last decades before NIL was greenlit.
Yeah, and it gives more people a shot if you have the resources, right? Going back to the Indiana guys here, and this new era that we're in. But yeah, it's back in the day, it was like you look at the high school recruiting rankings, and the same. It's like that line at the end of Rounders where he's like, why are the same 10 people sit at the table every year at the World Series of Poker? Like, are they the luckiest guys on earth? This is the same thing with high school recruiting for colleges back in the day. Same 10 at the table every single year. Now, you have the portal thing as well. And the resources obviously lead to the top teams in that. So it's a way to shake things up. And I think it's made the sport more interesting.
Hey,
Football.
Thor, how good is Fernando Mendoza?
He's real good. Real good.
Like how would you, and we're getting into the draft lead up here, and there's going to be a lot more football takes, draft centric episodes the next 3 months, but how would you contextualize where he's at as an NFL quarterback prospect relative to the last 10 years or so?
A couple of comps that I think are strong for him and fair for him. One of them was Jared Goff coming out of Cal, and Mendoza was at Cal before now. So, I always hesitate kind of with the helmet scouting, but I think that that's a really fair one. A guy that wins in the pocket in structure. It's really hard to slow him down. And guys where they're not quite as good, if you can push them off their spot and force them to play out of structure. But good luck trying to do that. Another one, fair one that I've heard that I kind of agree with is when Matt Ryan was coming out of Boston College. A lot of similarities there as well. So I think you're looking at a prospect like that, like someone kind of in that phylum.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I mean, he's such a unique personality. He's a big dude.
He's such a goofball.
He is.
Yeah.
I mentioned this to you a couple weeks ago about just wondering how his personality is going to play in an NFL locker room. I mean, Tom Brady was down there field side the entire game. Mark Davis, John Spytek, right? The Raiders general manager. Really interesting that those guys all wanted to stand there and just let's get one last look at this. I can't imagine that last night.
I'm sure it was
did
just a
anything to sway
coincidence,
them.
Phil.
Yeah. I don't think it did anything to sway them from taking him with the number 1 overall pick. But, that dude I've said this the whole stretch run. I mean, he reminds me of a cross between Tim Tebow and Kirk Cousins and maybe a little Matt Ryan body type or Jared Goff body type in there.
Yeah, as far as the personality, for sure. He's just so relentlessly upbeat and positive and kind of a square like that. But I we get the biggest kick out of him. But yeah, on the field, just a really good in structure inside the pocket passing thrower there. He's going to be a worthy number 1 pick. And frankly, they could have submitted the card last night. This draft in April starts at number 2. We're just wasting time till we get there. Mendoza will be the first pick.
just let's get it over with right now.
Yeah, submit it. Let's put the Jets on the clock at number 2.
And they can start wheeling and dealing and trading.
I have thought in the past, this is a football take thing for a different football take. They love to stretch the draft out so much. I've wondered why they haven't gone to a thing yet where it's like they stretch the picks out over a month, where it's like every night we get. It's
every night. Oh,
yeah, we get these, 10 picks tonight,
And then each network can trade off.
Yeah,
tonight
here we go.
On NBC.
Yeah.
It's picks.
Let's start it in February.
15.
You could do that for the top 5 picks, and then you have to pick it up.
I think you're onto something, dude. I think
literally
a 3-month draft where, all right, tonight, picks 18 through 25.
Oh,
we'll see what happens.
Don't give them ideas, Thor.
Oh, this would be great.
Did we
give 'em
reduce it
ideas.
to 8 minutes now in the first round?
Yeah, reduce it to 8 minutes.
It was 15 about 10 years ago.
And now we're down because people's attention spans are shortening. We can't sit there forever.
Well, you don't need that much time.
I got takes to sling. 8 minutes. You're really you're constricting me there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to.
Got to get them in.
Yeah, that's true.
Suppressing our takes.
Yeah.
All right. Congrats, man. Indiana. It is we're Thor in his college football rooting interests. Kansas, Iowa, a little bit of fringe Gophers. Judd and I, Gophers. All of our program. Iowa is probably the closest of all those, but all of our programs now. You have something to aspire to. Find your Mark Cuban. Find your Curt Cignetti. Find your Fernando Mendoza, and you too can go 16-0.
Who's the Gophers? I got a take still.
Oh, okay.
I got my take. My take is this. This is the Big Ten's world, and the SEC is living in it.
Yeah,
that's true.
And that's that, okay? Last 3 natties, Michigan, Ohio State, Indiana.
Midwest forever.
Before that, the SEC had won 5 of the 6 titles.
Yeah.
So in the last 3 years, 3 different schools, too. 3 different schools. So, SEC, I hope you had fun. This new world is not necessarily your friend, but it is the Big Ten's, in part because of the TV money being funneled to the Big Ten is so ridiculously high. And you know what? It's a lesson, too, for all of these schools, all of these Big Ten schools, like the Gophers. You know what? Academics is fine. Focus on football.
100%.
Well, who was it? Was it Carson Beck that was asked about?
Graduated
how
2
does it
years
work with,
ago.
like your classes. He's like, my classes.
Carson Beck's salary this season, $3.1 million.
Yeah.
Mendoza,
Bro, my classes.
2.6. Not bad.
Yeah. Well, Caleb Williams wasn't Caleb Williams like 3 years ago living in like the penthouse of some Los Angeles building,
Yep.
$3.5-4 million a year in NIL money. Yeah.
Arch Manning, 5.3. Highest paid player. 5.3 million, Arch. We expect to see more next season.
What's Dante getting up in Oregon? Like 7?
Yeah, it's a big number. I don't know if we trust or rely that
I found a
reports have
list
come
that
up,
said-
but
I found a list
numbers.
of top 5 that had Arch Manning 1, Jeremiah Smith of Ohio State at 4.2, second, Carson Beck third, Bryce Underwood, the quarterback at Michigan, fourth at $3 million, and Fernando Mendoza 2.6.
And when was that? That was before. Was that recent? Like
Yeah,
before
it was
last
like
week?
Because
Oregon had to. There was a little negotiation there last week. It felt like between the Jets and Oregon, right? Didn't take much from Phil Knight to probably win that negotiation.
No, I was going to say Phil Knight like snapped his fingers like that's it. Okay, thanks, bye.
But isn't that crazy? I mean, literally, it would have been unthinkable anytime before, like 2 or 3 years ago. You're going to be the number 2 pick in the NFL draft, which is going to guarantee you like $20 or $30 million, even if you get hurt. And now for there to be an option where, you know what? I don't want the Jets $25 million. I don't want them to ruin my future earnings or my body. So I'd rather just take $5 or $6 or $7 million, go back to college, and then if I have to dodge the Jets again next year, I'll file a waiver and see if I can dodge them again.
It's crazy how little early declarees we had in this class. Just another offshoot from the NIL era. I think it was like low 40s. And there's a small handful of guys on there. They didn't even play in college. Some of them just, for funsies, they'll declare for the draft. Like the guys that are actually relevant in this class, it's a number more like 30. And in years past, you'd have over 100 guys declaring early for the NFL draft and being granted this special exemption for eligibility into the NFL draft. It is wildly changed. And then in this environment where you can actually make a legitimate argument to Dante Moore, it is in your financial best interest to turn down being the number 2 draft pick in the NFL draft to come back. We'll pay you more next year than they will. And also, you will have a much lower chance of busting if you go into the NFL with 30 plus starts as opposed to the 20 that you have now. And maybe you won't be going into the Jet situation where you're the 10th straight savior that they've had that they take and they never add talent at other positions. It's going to be your job, the hopes and dreams of the city. You're inevitably going to fail. So, I just love what the new systems. There's a lot of complaints about it, but I think a lot of times the positives aren't discussed with it.
Okay, one more thing for you guys before you wrap football takes. At least this edition.
Football.
We have a couple more episodes this week. Click that subscribe button if you haven't on the Football Takes YouTube channel. We just launched this a few weeks ago. It'll be home to all kinds of draft content from Thor, our reactions to Championship Sunday and the Super Bowl, etc., NFL free agency. You can also find this podcast on Apple and Spotify or anywhere you listen to podcasts. In the spirit of the NC2A PlayStation games from back in the day, we have to do a real world. We each get to pick one team. Pick a crappy college football team. It can't be like Kansas. Can't be the Gophers. It can't be your heart's rooting interest. And that is the team you're going to root for to do what Indiana did the rest of your life. This is binding for the rest of your life right here. A real world example. Which team are you drafting?
But wait, Phil, are you saying the FBS program we most want to win a title, or is it that we think is most realistic?
Either way.
Well, but it's different criteria.
How about realistic?
All right, give me a second to think.
Judd?
Iowa State in the Big Ten. And are we talking about their dire straits right now? So they've been, and not Wisconsin.
Like
'cause
they've never
up.
been anywhere near winning a national championship.
Purdue
would be the criteria. Purdue?
Yeah, Purdue. I don't think they've been near it. They've had some good teams.
Yeah.
I do not believe they've ever been near, or if it was years before I was born, which is a long time ago. I'd go Purdue.
Okay. Okay. Can I get 2 and 1 here? Way back in the day. I don't even know how this works. I don't even know if they get NIL money.
Yep.
But back in the 40s, there was a dynasty called the Army Black Knights. Army, at the end of World War II, won 3 consecutive national championships from 1944 through 46. Navy won a national championship in 1926. How does NIL money are there like veterans who are funding
academies?
NIL money into the service academies, or are they just doing it the old-fashioned way, running the options 70 times a game, 3 yards in a cloud of dust?
They should give them $40 million government subsidy just 1 year, turn Army back into a juggernaut.
We're gonna take Greenland and the national championship. It's gonna be a
They should put
crazy
a college
year.
team
Yeah.
there. That's a great idea.
Could have a bowl game, sure. Sure.
All right, so I'm picking
absolutely
Navy. I'm
would.
picking Navy. I want to see Navy pulling Indiana.
Yours is Navy? Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'll go with there was you guys used to watch the ESPN 30 for 30.
Oh
Yeah, they
Did
still
you ever
pump somehow.
You ever see Pony Excess?
SMU.
SMU, baby, the ponies.
Love that pick.
Yeah, the ponies. They not only have the money, they got the unscrupulous boosters that want to win. They bought their way into the ACC, which makes no sense. But now they're here. They made the playoff last year. This is a team that has a lot of money to spend, and they're one that I could see having one of these like one-off years where they get a bunch of guys in the portal and then go and run it.
They were so far ahead of the curve. They got the
Sure were.
death penalty, which now you'd be applauded. It's like, yeah, you got all this
right.
money, all these cars.
Yeah,
they killed the program.
Indiana did it the way SMU did it, but now it's
That might be one of the most unjust things of all time. That
I
one
agree.
school. Like, okay, slap them with probation back then, but they gave them the death penalty.
Yeah, roll ponies forever.
Love it.
Yeah.
Craig James, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Was it Eric Dickerson who in that 30 for 30 rolled up with like a Ferrari
The car,
or something?
yeah. Like, yeah.
Just burns out in the parking lot. Oh,
Yeah.
amazing! All right, those are binding now. All right, we have to buy. We
All
have to
right,
buy
done.
merchandise.
Go
and everything.
Boilermakers.
Crazy.
Boiler up.
Let's go. Boiler up. Drew Brees, Kyle Orton, Judd Zolgad, Aiden O'Connell. All right, dudes. It's another episode of Football Takes. I know you guys are pumping one out tomorrow here. The NFL coaching carousel continues to spin. Robert Saleh, as of today, is the new Titans head coach. John Harbaugh just did his press conference. And then O-Line Committee, our other football-centric podcast you can find outside of Purple Daily and Thor Talks Purple. For Thor, for Judd, I'm Phil, and these have been our Football Takes. See you guys.